me take my glasses off because I can't put these in here. Hey, welcome to another segment of Hardcore Sports. So glad you joined us for another segment of Hardcore Sports. Shout out to Kenny Graham and Hub 17. Don't forget to go check out Hub 17. That is the lit place on Staten Island. Just check them out on Instagram, Hub 17 NYC. Shout out to Jamie Hickson in the bleachers. Shouts out. I just want to shout out to Jamie because I went to Boston a couple of months ago and I went to Fenway Park. And it's a bar restaurant that you can go into Fenway Park that's really not part of Fenway Park, but the name of the bar is called In the Bleachers. So the bar is called In the Bleachers, and literally you're sitting in this bar you're sitting in right field looking at the game, and it's not part of Fenway. I mean, it is part of Fenway, but you don't have to get a ticket to go in there. You just have to buy drinks and buy food. So they might have a cover. When I went, there was no cover, and they were doing batting practice when I went. So shout out to In the Bleachers. Shout out to Dan the Man. What's going on, Dan?
Hey, what's happening?
What's going on here? We got Dan the Man, who's the co-host, and hopefully we can get this technology up. Hopefully get some Zoom thing coming on in next year or whatever. But yeah, shout out to him. We got the Breeders' Cup Classic, which is like the Super Bowl of horse racing. All the best horses are going to come out this weekend. It's already started, but we got the Breeders' Cup Classic, which is 3-year-olds and up, right, Dan?
Yeah.
3-year-olds and up. So we'll get on that later, but we do have some breaking news. We do have breaking news, and it has to do with Staten Island. The Staten Island Yankees affiliate is moving to Somerset. The Staten Island affiliate is moving to Somerset. 2 Staten Island Yankee affiliates are moving. No, two New York Yankee affiliates are moving to Somerset. All of this earlier this year, or the end of last year, there was a press release that said that Major League Baseball will be consolidating their minor leagues, because part of what this commissioner wants to do, and what the complaint is, they're trying to compete with the NFL and the NBA, where players go directly. They don't have to spend years and years. So what it is they're trying to consolidate these minor leagues and make it easier so they don't have to spend their whole life in the minor leagues. So they're getting rid of a lot of teams. From what I read, it looked like 40 teams on a list that I saw. So they're getting rid of at least 2 divisions. They might just have 2 divisions at the end of the day. Because I know there's like 1 and 2 and 3. So I think they just might eliminate one of those levels and just have 2 levels. And that's it. Because it's just part of making baseball marketable to the young athletes and young people. Because, like, again, the big complaint is if you're a star basketball player, you could go directly from high school. I mean, from like LeBron and different ones, Amari Stoudemire, and the list goes on and on. And then even if you go to college for a year, maybe 2 years, and you're in the NBA. Maybe 4 years, and you spend 4 years in the NBA. But with the minor leagues, you could spend a decade and still not make it in the majors. So what it is, they're consolidating and they're saving money, because with all these teams as well, branched out all over the country, and some teams have 5 minor league teams. So they're trying to consolidate, make it easier for these players. So that's breaking news. It was unofficial earlier in the year, but now it is official. The Staten Island Yankees are moving out. So, and I have no idea what we were just discussing behind the scenes what they plan to use what they're going to use Yankee Stadium. The Staten Island Yankee Stadium is a beautiful facility, but I'm sure somebody else will use it. The Mets also. The word is the Mets are considering using it for one of their minor league, because one of their minor league teams is all over the place. Every year it's in a different place. So I think the Mets. It was been rumors that the Mets are considering it. So, and talking about the Mets have a new owner. Congratulations this week. The new owner, Stephen A. Cohen. He's at Twitter, Stephen A. Cohen 2 at Twitter, and the big debate this week has with this guy with money. We got, he's a billionaire. And he's going to be the richest owner in baseball, and I think he'll be the richest owner in sports. So the Met fans are salivating. They want the top free agents, and I don't blame them, because a lot of the Mets' woes of late under the Wilpons and that the Madoff Ponzi scheme really hurt them. I just want to say for this, the Mets did spend money. They had top players. They had David Wright. They had Carlos Delgado. They had Carlos Beltran. They had top fight players that they spent money on. But when the Madoff thing came, it hurt them. Right, Danny Man?
Yeah, they couldn't spend. I remember they had one summer where there were a lot of top free agents. The Mets didn't even pick up one.
Yeah, and then... So the Mets spent money. They even spent money. What was that guy? He ended up he was garbage, but they spent a lot of money on him. Forget that guy in the mid 2000s. They had some guy they had to wait for his contract to expire before they could get anybody else. But he was horrible. I can't remember his name. But anyway. One of the big free agents is this guy Trevor Bauer, who's a top pitcher who had a 1.7 ERA, and I think he's a top contender for the Cy Young Award. He played for the Cincinnati Reds, so the Mets should pick him up. My thing is, they didn't sign Wheeler, so they got to get a replacement for Wheeler, and the Mets have always had a history of having top flight pitchers throughout their history. If you go throughout decade, and I'm not going to go through it right now, because we have an agenda we have to cover. But if you go throughout the Mets history, from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, they've always had top flight pitchers. This season, they took the back seat, because they had Syndergaard hurt, and then they had to get pitchers on the humble. So now they have some money to spend. They need to go out and get a top flight pitcher to team up with DeGrom, and then shut the major. They can do it once they could get their pitching in order. And what I foresee is, you'll have DeGrom, Bauer, the number 2. You'll have Syndergaard coming back as the number 3. If Stroman picks up his option, he'll be the 4th pitcher, and they'll have Peterson, who was the rookie who did well. And you go from there. So once you lock down the staff, and that's the staff that I just mentioned, sounds like it's a no-nonsense staff that will lock teams down. So that's it. Once they get that under their belt, everything else should come in order. All right? Moving right along, want to shout out to Keyshawn Jackson. He has the morning show. Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. They just started in September. Keyshawn Johnson, who used to play for the Jets, he's doing very well. I like his commentating. He knows he's a football player. He's an ex-Jet, but he knows his stuff, and he knows his football. And he gives you a different perspective than everybody else. So I like hearing his opinions, especially about football, because he's not going to tell you everything that everybody else is saying. I like that thing about him, and he knows his stuff. So check out Keyshawn John, ESPN Mornings, 6 to 10 at 98.7. And he's from L.A. He's originally from L.A., so he's a Dodger fan, and he's a Lakers fan, so he's celebrated 2 championships this year. So getting into this, the Lakers, let's talk about the NBA draft. The NBA draft is coming up November 18th. So I want to put this in perspective of the Knicks. You know I'm going to get my Knicks scenarios in. I got to talk some Knicks scenarios in regards to this NBA draft. So now, just to get you up to date, because I've been doing a lot of online videos, Facebook Live, and a few other Twitter Lives. Since we did the COVID, I still want to do hardcore sports. So Dan and I did a couple during the shutdown. So, but what has come up there is definitely have a new attitude when it comes to the Knicks, and this is part of it. We have to stop blaming Dolan, and we have to stop blaming Steve Mills and Scott Perry and James Dolan in particular for all the Knicks problems. The Knicks problems, and I put this out there. I'm willing to debate anybody on this because it was COVID. I had time to do my research. 80% of success comes from getting the number 1 draft pick, period. If you go back through history, and actually if you Google number one draft picks and go through number 1 draft picks in the NBA, and you go through all of them, 80 to 85% of those number 1 draft picks went to the finals. And I'm not going to go into all the detail now, but you go look it up. 80 to 85%. So the Knicks' problems don't come from James Dolan. They don't come from Isaiah Thomas. They don't come from Scott Perry. It comes from the draft. And guess what? The Knicks haven't had a number 1 draft pick since 1985. And my thing is, what enlightened me to this is the Cleveland Cavaliers didn't have a number 1 draft pick. No, the Cleveland Cavaliers had 3 number 1 draft picks in 4 years. Let me say this again. In recent memory, the Cleveland Cavaliers acquired 3 number 1 draft picks in 4 years. So I said, wait a minute. How did the Cleveland Cavaliers get three number 1s? And the Knicks haven't had a number 1 pick in 35 years. So they have to do something. The NBA has to do something to fix that draft lottery. They have to actually drop the draft lottery and just do it the way the NFL does it and the way Major League Baseball does it. The worst team gets the best players, period. This lottery just puts a lot of monkey wrench on a whole lot of things. And the thing about the Cavs, they got the number 1 pick, traded him, and went to the finals that year. That just shows you how vital number 1 draft pick is. And like I said, the highest pick the Knicks have had in the last 40 years was Patrick Ewing and Kristaps Porzingis at 4. All those players that were acquired under Isaiah Thomas were 7th pick, 8th pick, 9th pick. You're not going to find anybody at during those picks. That's why the Knicks, when they made the trade for Melo, had all role players that they trade Melo for. So, and if you go back and look at all of those drafts, none of those players turned out to be any superstar. So, because the Knicks were picking 7, 8, and 9, you're really not going to, you find a diamond in the rough every 30 years, like a Steph Curry, every 30 years. That's luck. Everybody wants to talk about, no, everybody has the same information. Everybody in the NBA has the same information. So, so the draft is coming up. there's a few trade scenarios. I'm gonna try to get all of this in. There's a few trade scenarios that's out there that are being talked about. First is the Karl Anthony Towns, a D'Lo. D'Lo was talking to the Knicks before he was traded to Golden State. Because the Nets went and acquired Kevin Durant, the Nets did a sign and trade, because a lot of these free agent signings usually end up to be sign and trade to begin with. So they did a sign and trade. Golden State didn't want D'Lo, but they just did the trade just to consummate the deal for Kevin Durant. Golden State traded D'Lo to the Timberwolves with Karl Anthony Towns, and Karl Anthony Towns is from this area. So one of the trade scenarios is the Knicks can trade draft picks and some players that they have on their current roster. The Knicks have 2 number ones this year, 2 number ones next year, and they've got a boatload of draft picks. So one of the trade scenarios is trading D'Lo and Karl Anthony Towns to the Knicks for whoever players we have, but Bobby Portis to be the main guy in that trade. The other trade is trading for is making a trade for they've always been talking about Chris Paul and James Harden. They've been talking about those recently in the press. I wouldn't do those trades, and I hope the Knicks do not. But the one guy I would do a trade for, and they all make the same amount, is James Harden. I would definitely go after James Harden. He makes the same amount of money as Chris Paul, and he makes the same amount of money as Russell Westbrook. Both of those guys, I believe, are over the hill, but I think James Harden's got something in the tank. I think he's still got something left, and he makes the same amount. So I would do a deal for James Harden, but none of those other guys. So, and then you have a piece, and you've traded a lot of players. So if the Knicks do go after a player like that, like a James Harden or Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook, then they have to go after other free agents that are available, because they don't have a roster. So there's about 60, 70 free agents out there to be signed in the NBA. And the last scenario is the Devin Booker scenario. Devin Booker, and this is a long shot. This is a long shot scenario. But the current GM of the Knicks is the former agent of Devin Booker. So let's see how much power that this guy has. And the reason for the Knicks getting Devin Booker, if they can make the trade for Devin Booker before the trade deadline when free agency comes, maybe you could be able to draw Anthony Davis in. You got Devin Booker there, who's a rising star in the NBA, and you have Anthony Davis, who's already, he's a free agent. So he's going to be out there. And I know he's going to get tired of LeBron taking all the credit for all the work he's doing. So AD led the Lakers with points and rebounds. So let's see how this all unfolds. So these are my Knicks scenarios. We got Dan the Man and the Nets. The Nets got Steve Nash as a new head coach, with Amari Stoudemire and Mike DAntoni as assistant. So Dan, you're a Net fan. What do you think about this Steve Nash to the Nets?
Yeah, I think it's good because if you look at the Brooklyn Nets roster, it's pretty much stacked. You got the Nets have Durant, they have Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan, Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert. They have to sign what's his name, Joe Harris. They have center Jared Allen. I mean, it's just stacked, and it's guard heavy as well.
Yeah, it's a good team.
Yeah, I like it because they trying to win a championship. I think I forgot another. Oh, we had Tyler Johnson, who did well in the playoffs. You know, the Nets are very talented, and they showed that this season. You know, they didn't have their top players, but they still made the playoffs. You know, with the team that they have. You know, without Dinwiddie and Irving and Durant. So it goes to show you that the Nets have an excellent team. It's just that, you know, you have to have a plan. You have to have these guys healthy. And I think, you know, Steve Nash, you know, he was with the Warriors when they won their championship, and he has a good rapport with Durant. So this is who Durant really wanted, and I found out that Nash also has a good rapport with Kyrie Irving. So I guess this will help. And I think right now the Nets, they have so many players. I'm looking forward to see what type of player that they would get. For some, I'm hearing that they might trade Dinwiddie or Caris LeVert, which I wouldn't trade Caris LeVert, but you know, because the Nets have players.
No doubt, the Nets do have some players, and I think that they're going in the right direction. And I always like DAntoni. I don't think that DAntoni throughout his history has had a good lineup to work with, other than the Phoenix Suns that he had, and the unfortunate situation with players coming off the bench and players getting suspended in the Western Conference Final. But DAntoni's system has moved a lot of teams with just average players into the playoffs. So DAntoni, I like his system, and I think him mentoring Nash and then kind of really handing it off to Nash to help him get started with the Nets is a really good thing. And I see a good history with Nash at the helm. And then Nash brings his MVPs. People forget he got 2 MVPs when he played for Phoenix those years. So he was a terrific player. And he'd be the perfect guy to institute that DAntoni system. Actually, it's really not a DAntoni system. It was some coach that was from the 70s or 60s that played in. This is actually what DAntoni brought is the NBA, the ABA system, the way they used to play in the ABA.
Well, Doug Moe used to, when he was a coach. He used to have that type of system, ABA. He used to coach the Denver Nuggets and coached them in the NBA. And they were high flying. They had guys, you know, averaging like 25 points a game. Like, I think he had like about 3 players on the team that averaged like 24, 25 points a game, like Alex English, I think Dan Issel, and yeah, he had a bunch of guys. I think David Thompson, something like that. He had a whole bunch of players, you know, and they used to run up the score. They used to have games where you see them scoring like 150, 140 points, you know.
Listen, you hit it right on. You took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, you and I never discussed this. Yeah, that was a guy, Doug Moe, who's from Brooklyn. Doug Moe from Brooklyn. I'm gonna tell you, the Nuggets, the teams that he coached, the Nuggets of 1981, I believe, had the most points ever scored in a season. They averaged 129 points a game in 1981. The Denver Nuggets under Doug Moe averaged, and using that system, and DAntoni and the coach of San Antonio and a few other guys, they played for him. George Karl and DAntoni played for the Nuggets under Doug Moe.
Yeah, I think they also played together with the San Antonio Spurs and the ABA, I think. Both of those guys.
But yeah, it's the DAntoni system, all of that stuff. They're gonna be looking to score. They're gonna be looking to score and move that ball and score, and that's the old Doug, like Dan said, Doug Moe, DAntoni. They had 3 players that averaged over 20 points a game. 3 players.
Well, really, like 24 points a game. I mean, it was crazy. I think they have 4 players, if I'm not mistaken, that averaged over 20 points a game. I mean, that's how much they scored.
And so now you see where the 7 seconds or less.
Vanderway. I think he was the fourth guy on that team that averaged over 20 points a game. They had 4 guys on that team.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Kiki again, but let's go to. I'm not sure if he was on that team. I think was too young for those guys. But moving right along to this Breeders' Cup, we right here. We got a good time. Good thing to talk. We have a few minutes before we go to talk about the Breeders' Cup. So what's going on with this Breeders' Cup tomorrow at 5:30? Breeders' Cup Classic.
It starts from race 4 all the way up to 12. And the race 12 is the Classic. We don't have too much time to talk about all the races, but I just want to talk about the Classic because you have all these real good horses in one race. You have Authentic, who won the Kentucky Derby. You have Tiz the Law, who won the Belmont. You have all these horses like Maximum Security, who was a world beater at the beginning of the year. He kind of tailed off in his last race. You have Improbable, who won 3 straight Grade 1s. You have Tom's D'Etat, who's everybody's favorite horse. You have Global Campaign, who's bred by Curlin. He won the Woodward. There's a lot of good horses, and it was hard to really handicap this whole entire race.
Let me just want to interject one thing here. When everything was shut down and there was no sports, the first sport to get on track and do social distancing was horse racing. Go ahead. That was the first sport to be televised with no fans and did social distancing with no fans, and they kept it going, and that was it. They were worried about jockeys and people who worked at the track and all that stuff, but they got it going. They were the first sport to get it going. Yeah, go ahead.
And the only sport to really, and that's why a lot of people got into horse racing.
And a lot of people got into it because it was the only thing that was going at the time. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
Anyway, let's get to the Classic.
So let's get to these picks. I see Tiz the Law
I don't have the number. Let me see.
Improbable is the favorite, right?
Yeah, the race is at 5:18. I picked Authentic to go wire to wire in this race. I think he's the number 9 horse. He won the Kentucky Derby going wire to wire. I did some research. This race is at Keeneland, Kentucky, and that was the race of the Classic in 2015 when American Pharoah went wire to wire. So I was saying, wait a minute. This the only speed in the race is Authentic, and Bob Baffert know how to win the Classic, especially at Keeneland at this distance. And Authentic won the Kentucky Derby at this distance. So you know what? I'm giving him a shot. My picks is first is Authentic, the 9 horse. Second, I have Improbable. That's the favorite. I think he'll run well. My third pick is Global Campaign. He's out of Curlin, and Curlin won at the Classic at Monmouth Park. I was hoping that it would rain so that I would put Global Campaign on top. Instead, I put him third, and fourth is Maximum Security. So and that's number 10. So my numbers is 9, 8, 7, 10.
9, 8, 7, 10. That's it. And listen, one thing about this year, Dan has been on point. Every race. There's some race I haven't had a chance to bet, but I won a lot of money this year with Dan the Man. 9, 8, 7, 10. Give it a shot. I've seen a few people over at Winners when I've gone, so I know you from the hood because I see you in the hood and I see you at Winners. So a lot of people are watching. Thanks for watching. 98710 Breeders' Cup Classic. Put your money down. It might be something. I'm gonna definitely listen. Dan's been right. Shout out to Kenny G, Kenny Graham, Hub 17. Shout out to In the Bleachers with Jamie. Thanks for watching. See you next month for another segment of Hardcore Sports. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Peace.